to the panel for the future of AI. A bit about myself is I'm a Microsoft Power developer, so I deal with the low-code, no-code side of things and use and automate in the processes. And introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Somdip. I am the CEO of Nosh Technologies, and I'm also lecturer at multiple universities.
Hello, I'm Andrew Keith Walker. I am a writer and a podcaster who's always worked in tech until I started writing and podcasting, and now I write and podcast about tech.
Hello, I'm Maryleen, and I'm a researcher, an architect, AI researcher and architect, and I've also been involved in delivering and developing programs, educational programs around AI, and also upskilling persons in it.
Yeah, my name is Miracle, also involved in reskilling and upskilling individuals in the area of AI and data domain. I was a mentor at Lanturin Data and AI Educators Program, and AI user, so I'm here to speak like an AI user as well. Yeah, thank you.
So basically we're going to go through topics about the future of AI and people's opinions behind that. So on the basis of spending money behind using ChatGPT, it's an extortionate amount of money each day to use it. What are people's opinions on how we can make it more energy efficient and using LMN? Okay.
Thank you. So I'll start with some statistics. So these statistics are from ChatGPT itself. So every single day, just to operate the ChatGPT, OpenAI spends more than $690,000. Now, the operational cost is mostly to support or to run more than 3,600 servers which are using the A100 GPU chips. So every single day, more than $500,000 is spent just to operate ChatGPT itself. Now, let me take a step back. If we can recall 2009 when Bitcoin was made public and it was invented, still by market cap today, Bitcoin is the most the most held cryptocurrency around the world. However, Bitcoin uses energy that is equivalent to the energy usage of countries like Greece, Australia. So this shows us that when we build technology, we do not take into consideration that what could be the energy consumption of such technology. Similarly, with AI products and services, now when we are developing them, we are mostly thinking about, okay, how can we build cool things with AI? And how do we get an output? Rather than having the cost of energy consumption inbuilt on the design process itself. So my point is that given that right now we are more environmental conscious, we definitely need to work on thinking about the cost of energy on building any product, AI or not, moving forward. That said, again, large language models can be very complicated depending on exact architecture that they are using. But with ChatGPT, I think it's high time that in the next versions of the GPT-5 model or GPT-5 onwards, the OpenAI team should definitely start thinking about how to optimize the model itself so that it can consume less energy and also, of course, utilize less computational resources. Any other take on this?
Yeah, I wanted to say something on energy efficiency as well. So there are two aspects of the energy cost here. One on the training side, so how much it costs to train the model, as well as the energy consumed. But on the other side as well, you have to think of the inference, because a lot of the inference, that's every time you're using the model, every time you're writing something, a prompt, and you're getting a response, there's energy cost involved in that as well. So those are the two aspects, and I think that when we talk about the future of AI, we have to look at projects on both sides. So how to make it more efficient with respect to the training, but also the inference aspect. And I think there is some work already going on there. So recently, I think it was in December, that Microsoft announced the small language model, which is really, why do we need to use this large language model, especially for use cases that are very specific and smaller use cases? Why don't we go for less costly models, more energy efficient models that are trained on smaller number of parameters? So that's really the rationale, and which could potentially perform maybe at similar rate as the large language model. So that's why there is ongoing work and interest in that area, but as well as the inference. So I came across an interesting research where a team, they were looking at how, typically the reason a lot of energy is being used at inference is you have this redundant hardware. Whenever you as a user, you enter a prompt. So this hardware is there it's just redundant. It's just always running, waiting for someone that would make a request and a demand on it. But this team, they were looking at how to optimize using an optimizer, more like a switch. So depending on the kind of request, if it's going to be very intensive, for example, processing image, that's more computationally intensive, and it would connect it to a bigger model, like GPU models or GPU hardware. Or on the other case, if it's going to be a smaller task, then it connects it to more CPU hardware. So it does that kind of switching and optimizer. And I think that thinking about the future of AI, we definitely have to be thinking about efficiency, and both on the training side, using smaller model potentially, and also on the inference side as well.
I mean, there's a genuine interest here, I think, for many industries. We've seen the growth of ESG metrics, environmental, social, and governance metrics, which right now are going through a bit of a sort of rocky phase as some investment houses like BlackRock want to move away from that kind of measurement and look at other things that relate to sustainable development goals and those kinds of issues. But I think all tech companies are probably going to become subject to regulation at some point when it comes to, you already have to have quite a lot of environmental policies in place and data. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if we didn't get to a stage where there wasn't some degree of regulatory oversight in terms of your systems and your systems efficiency. Because I did an interesting calculation once. I tried to work out, I've got obviously a phone, and a laptop, and a desktop, and I sort of worked out for my household how many computers we had, and I sort of multiplied that out across the UK based on the first generation iPhone and a Macintosh Performance 630, which was my very first computer with 4 megs of RAM and a 20 megabyte hard drive. And I worked out you'd have to cover virtually 2/3 of Northern Europe with sort of 5-story data centers just to supply the UK with enough processing power for everyone to have a mobile phone, a laptop, and a computer at home, which obviously would have been a cataclysmic event and annihilated humanity. So we've lived through quite a few extinction level events in terms of our processing power and our energy requirements, and we've always managed to get through it because processors have got faster, systems have got more efficient, etc. But we're kind of reaching a bottleneck now with how much faster we can make this stuff. And I think that's going to be the tipping point that sort of brings some degree of regulatory oversight into play to say, okay, fine, you've got these systems, there will be a cost that comes on it. Although, having said all of that, I would say that the challenge really is some bitcoins, just to use that analogy, some bitcoins are incredibly destructive carbon-wise. Other ones that are mined in Germany almost entirely from renewable energy have a very, very different footprint. So it's also quite difficult to understand the broader ramifications of the sort of carbon implications of this. But it is absolutely something that's going to shape the future of AI.
So how do we think we can make more energy efficient AI models going forward?
So moving forward, one area, or basically two areas, I would suggest that everyone should look into is first is embedded machine learning. Now, usually a lot of people have different definition in their mind. However, just to simply mention what embedded machine learning is, it's machine learning in embedded systems. So you can't take any AI or machine learning model and run on any embedded system naturally. So you have to either optimize or come up with a completely new version of that model such that you get the same output and performance on the embedded systems. So moving forward, embedded machine learning would be really beneficial, especially when we are thinking about optimizing the energy consumption of AI models. And the second area I would highly suggest, that's federated learning. Again, because federated learning happens, it can take place on IoT devices or end consumer products with limited computing resources. So that's another field that can actually help to reduce the energy consumption as well.
Federated AI also is crucial because you have the opportunity then to try and leverage the functionality without putting data in the public domain. It's the solution that is being pursued most within, I mean, one of my podcasts I produce and host is about fintech and the finance industry. And when you talk to them about AI, the big worry is, yes, but we have so many regulations governing what we can and can't do with our data. And most of the solutions now are saying, well, federated models you can air gap and you can run internally. You can, have much more control over who has access, and there's no leakage out into the public domain. That seems to be the most effective way forwards. And then also, it gets you away from the energy issues, for sure.
Yeah, and just like I mentioned earlier as well, so we have to be thinking of, because even when we are done with the training, let's say we had a model that was, very more energy efficient, smaller models, we always have to be thinking about the inference costs, because that's an ongoing cost that would carry on, and that's where thinking about some methods like the one I mentioned earlier, where you have to probably offload some computationally expensive tasks to the larger models, and then or the hardware that is larger, and vice versa. So those are things. The inference is one area I would have to be thinking about how to reduce the costs around energy as well.
And also the training cost, we also have to consider reducing that as well. Yeah.
I would like to add to what Andrew has mentioned earlier about privacy by giving an example, although it might seem like a bit shameless plugging, but our company, Nosh Technologies, we built the app called Nosh app. Now, it actually helps consumers to reduce food waste, save money in the process. However, globally, more than 1.3 billion tons of food are wasted, and that itself contributes to almost 10% of global carbon emission. So by saving food from being wasted, we are technically also helping making the environment better. Now, the Nosh app uses embedded machine learning as well as federated learning in the background. So the app learns the usage pattern of the consumer in a way that the app knows when the consumer buys something, consumes the food, or wastes the food. However, our main server doesn't know which particular consumer is having a behavior which can be either bad, good, or neutral, or when it comes to food consumption and wastage, because again, we are using federated learning, so we have an idea, like our AI on the server has the idea that where food is being wasted, in which region, but it doesn't have the idea who is wasting it. So at the end of the day, our learning goal was that, okay, how food is being wasted throughout the different regions of the planet so that we can take better action. So this goes to show that how federated learning or embedded machine learning can play a key role in ensuring users' privacy, but at the same time, it is capable of learning a lot as intended. So I just wanted to share this example.
There's actually another interesting take that sort of sits hand in hand with that to do with generative AI, because often generative AI is the big open access model that people are worried about their data going in there. But there's been some interesting work, sort of various tests that have been going on with Google's generative AI team to take data sets that contain privacy information and then model those into synthetic data sets that don't belong to anyone at all and have no privacy implications because they're completely artificially generated, but they maintain all those same relationships, which can then be used in testing, and they can be distributed, and you can do big data analysis and things in there without any leakage at all. And all of this research came out from, I think it was Netflix, was it in 2007, who released a whole load of customer preference data without meaning to, because they said, well, these are our most popular shows, and here's the whole data set of anonymized users, but actually you could easily look at the star ratings and go back to see the public recorded food rated what on Netflix, and then start identifying people. So there is another interesting angle, but that doesn't get around the energy issues. That's using more energy to take data and then create a synthetic data set. So in a way, that's the exact opposite of what we want to happen. But at the same time, it's also really cool. Apart from the fact it's kind of making everything hot.
Okay, perfect. So with AI now, where do you think it will be in 10 to 20 years with your chosen career paths? So like with Nosh, for example, how do you think AI will improve to help your business?
So our goal is to leverage AI to help consumers to achieve zero food waste within their household. Now, I know it's a bold statement because it's very difficult to waste no food. However, this statement doesn't mean that there won't be any food waste at all. What this statement means that even if you end up wasting very little amount of food, at least there will be AI products that help you to recycle or compost the food wasted items such that it can be beneficial for the environment rather than completely wasted. So moving forward in our company, we are specifically focusing on building AI-based products and services to be able to reduce food waste and also in the process help the environment.
When you said 10 to 20 years, I thought that's a huge time scale. I mean, if I go back 20 years, and sadly I can easily go back 20 years of my working life, then, I mean, no one had a smartphone, right? So the world was very different. 20 years ago, I was still having conversations with people who were telling me that mobile phones would never catch on, that no one would ever ditch their BlackBerry because you can't type properly. Then, we look at the huge, there was no social media, you look at the huge transformation that took place. So I don't think we can look 20 years ahead so much with AI. What I would do, though, is just, I suppose, make a reference point about where we are now. If I go back to when I first started out, I think the first copy of Photoshop I got was Photoshop 2. And back in the days of Photoshop 2, you could make graphics with a drop shadow, which is amazing. And everyone did it. Every website, of which there were like 5, and they were all on the Janet Gateway Network universities when I was doing my postgrad. They all had drop shadows, apart from the ones, obviously, that couldn't handle images. And they were terrible web pages. They didn't work properly. The code was rubbish. You had to make the image in Photoshop, then you had to take it into a program called Graphic Converter to turn it into a JPEG or a GIF. And it took hours of pissing around to make something that generally just looked terrible. And this was everyone's life. Oh yeah, I've got a new drop. The drop shadows got so big that sometimes it was just shadow, and the actual text would be hovering off the side of the computer. It was crazy. So I'm going to say right now, we're kind of in that phase with AI. Everyone is making drop shadows and going, oh my God, this is amazing. But by the same token, it's completely pointless. So I think what we will see over the next, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, maybe tops, is I think it's about the only visibility we can get, is AI becoming much more invisible in the same way Photoshop is now. It's part of the Creative Cloud. No one spots a drop shadow. I do. Obviously, it scarred me for life. And in a way, I still think it's cool. But there is that element of, I think it'll just fade into the background, and we will all just expect a higher level of natural language processing in all the software and hardware we interact with. That would be my prediction.
Yes, an educator. I just want us to imagine a world where everybody's dream is realized. So, and I think AI is in that space, bringing everybody's dreams reality, because it's like a leveler. It's possible. So that's where it's also coming in. Considering a lot of disadvantaged people, and I want to learn, but because they don't have access to education, and maybe a mentor or something, but they have the privilege of leveraging AI for this education, self-education as well. So, and they can become what they want to be in life. So, that's where I see AI playing a very big, role. To be very honest, I transitioned from engineering, and technology was somehow scary to me at some point. But I'm not afraid again. It destroyed fear in me. That's one of the things that AI it's also powerful of doing, so I can learn whatever I want to learn with it. So I think developers now, they can solve big problems even with copilots, AI copilots. So AI is actually, playing a very big role, and I think it has going to stay, going forward.
Okay. All right, I'm probably going to be playing the devil's advocate here, because AI is a double-edged sword. It's in the future, the way I think about it, it's creating a lot, because I was just debating about this. Would people lose their jobs with AI? Well, I wouldn't answer that, but it's going to create jobs. It's going to create problems, and as well as creating new jobs, because let's use the example of in cybersecurity space, for example. We've seen an upsurge. I was reading an article where they said that there's been an upsurge of cyber attacks, and most of that is linked to Gen AI, right? Because you have new stuff happening, phishing attacks have grown, so many things. So the captcha that we use, it's now more difficult to distinguish between AI and human because it's getting smarter. So these are the problems in the AI safety space, cybersecurity space that is going to be created, which will give us enough headache to solve in the next 10, 20 years. And it's evolving. There's been talks around emergent capabilities of AI, things that we are yet to even understand and see that's been, emerging and coming up. And those are some of the issues that we'd have to deal with. So it's going to leave us with enough problems to think about in 10, 20 years' time. And part of the problem is going to leave us with as well is the area of dominance and control, because just similar to the way there was a lot of, if you want to search something, you have to Google it, right? So the tech players, they had lots of dominance around the activities we do or things that we do in the, the space, the cyberspace. And that's also what we are beginning to see, at least with what happened with OpenAI. You could see that issue of the persons who are going to be the first movers, those who are going to control AI, they would have a lot of control over most of the applications we build, because what we are seeing is that the foundational models are what most of the small players, they don't have the money to train the large language model. So what do? They just leverage that, they connect to it, they'll create their own workflows and use it to create applications. And which means if the big tech companies all have control over those large language models, it's typically everyone pointing back to how we were with the Google search. Everyone is going to point back to the models that are controlled by the big four companies. As an example, recently there was an inquiry that's been made with the Federal Trade Commission around the big players as to the level of control, the level of partnerships they're having to really understand issues around dominance and competitive, because they want to control the dominance that they have over the markets, the AI market. So hopefully there's going to be, we wouldn't get to that point, but yeah, it's going to create enough issues for us, issues around who is controlling AI, who is calling the shots with AI, and who is, who has more control and competitive advantage over the other. So, but that is something enterprises have to deal with moving forward.
Just to add to what Mary has mentioned, so I am a bit optimist in whatever I do or think. That said, I believe that moving forward, two things we have to keep in mind. First of all, I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything and say, oh no, AI is not gonna replace a lot of jobs. It is going to replace a lot of jobs. I have seen many companies have already started using AI employees. So it's definitely coming. But that doesn't mean that as humans, we won't have certain jobs. It's just a matter of upskilling. So AI will create new jobs and positions. So that also means that we as humans have to keep up with the trend and upskill ourselves to be able to move to those new areas. And the second bit is I also believe that moving forward, we have to make AI accessible and affordable. What does this mean is that right now developed countries like US, UK, we have a lot of resources, especially monetary resources. So we can build the coolest AI model that are capable of doing a lot. However, if underdeveloped countries or developing countries are not able to utilize or use such model within their country itself, then this will again create a power imbalance. We will see similar issues like when nuclear technology was built. Countries were literally racing against each other to see who can have more nuclear weapon. But today, AI has replaced that. Every country is now running to build the coolest AI products and then use it. But we have to learn from our mistakes. So moving forward, we shouldn't just think about, okay, no, we are going to develop this AI technology only to keep it within the country itself. Rather, how we can make it more accessible for countries who are not able to afford it themselves. So government and policymakers, as well as AI researchers and entrepreneurs, should come together to think of ways to be able to achieve this.
So I think I spoke to Andrew about this a couple of weeks ago, the spam and not to spam, about education for children who may not have a better work life at home, and using it to educate and transform a curriculum. How do you think that would work going forward now?
That's a really hot one, because it touches on things that we've already said as well. The idea of AI could well be the great leveler. Because one of the things that always hits me as being dreadful is this idea that, children's educational performance is massively limited by learning grammar, words, all those kinds of things. And the learning process itself tends to follow vertical paths that don't always make sense. And AI suddenly provides a co-pilot for those children who don't have an education-positive learning environment, around them, whether that's due to the school, whether that is due to issues like I had at school, where basically I spelt British with 2 T's once, and my history tutor decided I was an idiot, and that was that. I was screwed. And he told my mother he thought I was an idiot because I couldn't spell British. And, you know what, Mr. Best, I've got to be honest with you, if you were here now, we'd have words, because he's not, is he? Because he was a big fella, as well, he'd take me apart. Even now, even though he must be 90. It's, one of those things that actually, we could actually focus on content, on the content of your brain, as opposed to how good you are at, spelling and structure, and all those things that children who go to private schools have a natural advantage with, because they have smaller classes, they have more access to more learning resources, they have more learning enrichment at home, they're more likely to have parents who sort of support their education in that way, because they don't have to work and they're not on shift and they don't have, complex times to manage and limited time to spend, teaching kids to read and that kind of stuff. AI fills that gap, but then there's the flip side, which it also frees up teaching to be radically different, not just in terms of the fact that I think it's crazy we pay teachers to spend a lot of time doing admin and not teaching. So again, there are applications there, and you can put a very positive spin on it. Yes, we know we're going to lose jobs, and I don't think we can gloss over that, but I use the example of horses, watches, and vinyl records and print as a sort of example, which is, you go back to 1864, which was when globally we achieved peak horse. And yes, I live in Suffolk, I'm going to say that right now. So there's lots of horses around my way. I don't have one myself. But one thing I have learned from my Labrador is you can't ride a dog. And that's really important, because when we used horses as engines, they had a really shit life. There were loads more of them, but they had a terrible life and they were cheap. Horses were very, very cheap and short-lived. If you look now, it started really, I guess, in around the 1970s as a sort of home equestrianism, leisure equestrianism evolved. The value of the horse started to go up massively, and horses have a much better life as pets. Because you can't ride a dog, the horse is valued for things that are uniquely horsey. And if you take that and you apply that to mechanical wristwatches, for example, we know that watches that tick are way more expensive than quartz watches, and that's because only watches that tick make the ticking sound. And if you look at the volumes of watches that come out of Switzerland, it's a third of what it was in the 1960s. You look at the price of those watches sold, and the income from Swiss watches is going up. And the average Rolex, like the average horse, compared to its peak, the peak of the Swiss watchmaking industry, is worth about 10 times what it was. Horses are worth 4 to 100,000 times what they were worth. If you look at vinyl, everyone had records. We've all broken records. We've all scratched them and we've not cared. We thought, I scratched it, so what? It was Neil Young. Didn't like it. I'm joking. Big Neil Young fan, just in case there's any Canadians here. I preferred Crosby, Stills and Nash, though, there. That said, vinyl now is a commodity. It's worth an awful lot of money. People are making vinyl again. It has achieved the same value that horses achieved when it came out of the dip. Swiss watches, if you look at print, quality print is now a luxury item. And I would like to think that rather than paying teachers to do admin, and rather than penalizing kids for their grammar and spelling, and similarly, rather than people spending their lives filling in spreadsheets, or using graphic converter to try and make a GIF Or if anyone remembers server push in the CGI bin. Ever remember before we had animated GIFs? Anyone ever do that? Yeah, sure. You definitely did, mate. I can tell. You must be pushing 50? No. No, I'm joking. Christ, that went wrong. Thank you. Finally. Someone who's under 50. You know what it's like. You know, all those dull jobs that you never wanted to do, the AI could replace that, and we could be left to do those things that only humans can do, because we have life experience, we have desires and aspirations, we taste things, we know what's cool, we can write poems that make your heart beat because you know it's real. And I think there is hopefully a sort of cultural renaissance that can come post the shakeout. And actually maybe people start making money from, you know, making a living from being musicians again, you know, or running food trucks and all those things that are far more experiential and uplifting for the human soul than, you know, working in investment banking or anything else, which is, you know, often purely administrative and easily replicable with algorithms.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out something. So when we talk about curriculum development, we understand that, we all know that it's supposed to help like with a structured guide to maybe achieving course objectives. And in the long run, you, let's take for instance a particular field or course you achieve, you know, becoming that person in that field. So, but when you look at some of the situations we have, let's say maybe a child in primary school that does not have an independent mind of his own. So you see, yes, AI can help with, you know, curriculum development, but that child, because he or she still struggles with, you know, maybe concentration. You know, this where we also have to look at the cons of AI as well. So I believe there should be an interplay as well. We are not going to really throw away, you know, school systems where you have coaches and mentors, but there can be an interaction and intersection between, you know, all of these factors as well. So we should not also forget that primary school children, secondary school struggle with concentration. You know, even some adults as well. You know, sometimes you can pick up the AI to you have a target, you still struggle with, you know, keeping to, you know, that structure of trying to achieve your target as well. So unless maybe there is a way tools too can help concentrations and even help, and we have you know, demos of that could impact other students, primary school students that are struggling in concentration. And I was in a classroom in primary school, and I found out that one of the ways to also control children is seeing their mates, their equals in class. You know, maybe you give a task, doing exactly what you're expected to do, having, you know, this independent mind and their equals. So the other child that is not very sound, you know, very independent with his mind can, you know, be motivated as well and all that. So I believe it's the things that we can also look into and see how even the technology can come in to help as well. But these are the cons we should also forget. Yeah.
There's this concept of imitation learning as well in training AI. But the angle I want to look at is what AI is doing now is similar to what cloud came to do, like that disruption that we see, how cloud came and brought about, you know, from on-prem, people moved to cloud. Why? For the flexibility, for the convenience, for, you know, you don't have to think about managing so many things, the administration, because you have maybe the SaaS model where everything is all managed for you. But with AI as well, from that angle, you see Gen AI is very, very easy. You can spin off something, just an application. You can build an application. You have the foundation model. You're not thinking about training the model and all that. And that sort of makes it easy to start learning, to start building. A lot of persons have built lots of stuff easily with Gen AI. So even a developer, a new developer, beginner can just start learning stuff. You have the abstractions from some of this framework that are being used. And that makes it very easy to learn how to use AI as well, how to build AI. But also on the flip side, you know, one thing with flexibility, when you give off, make it very flexible and user-friendly in that sense, you're giving up control as well. So, and that is the angle that most organizations have to look at as well. How much control are we willing to give up? Because if you build your application on top of a large language model you have no control over, they're going to maybe change something which you can't really control. So, for example, the cost might change, or some factors might change. I heard as well that, was it one of the models where the output was PNG and then they just changed it to another format, and you don't have control over that because that's not a model you trained. So I think that also, that aspect of control is another issue we're going to have, because that's going to affect how these models are going to be used in the future. So imagine, which is the reason, imagine the big fours, they are all the ones investing in large language models, and every other person is building on top of that. We're going to still get back to the point where we started from, around issues with access, issues with making it equitable, the social issues that we have. We have some players who are dominant and some other players, every other person, 99%, who are all going back to and looking at using the same models built by the same, or managed or controlled by the same person. So I think that, yeah, we're using AI to solve issues of equity, but if we don't address these issues of control, who controls the model, who controls the large language models, who has control over them? And I think that's why we need to be looking more towards open source models as well, where, coming back to education and research, it's open, it's equitable, a lot of persons have access, and they can use it to develop more and to learn and to improve and to just keep that innovation going.
I would like to circle back on the point that Andrew mentioned. It was about that using Gen AI or ChatGPT like model, it can actually enable educators to focus on content and education itself. So I can vouch for that. So I regularly use ChatGPT to develop better content, and also I asked the ChatGPT how I can be a more effective educator and give my students the best of experience while delivering the content. And that said, I also encourage my students to use ChatGPT as well as Google Bard, except if it's not related to assignment. So only on assignment they cannot use ChatGPT. But else, when it comes to the learning process, ChatGPT and Google Bard has been excellent. And I encourage everybody to use it to learn about new topics. It's better than just Googling.
Well, I was going to say, I think the problem, isn't it, is that we are in a unique situation now. I mean, this audience, the developer community, are the right people to be leading the way into an age of AI, because they're naturally underwhelmed by tech. The disappointing thing is, of course, if you go on LinkedIn for any period of time, you are drowning in AI snake oil. And it's mind-bending, and it's like there are two kinds of people, right? There are the ones who sit down with ChatGPT and they think, oh, actually, I can think of some use cases. This is great. This could be really productive for me, and this could help me get places. And then, they use Midjourney, and they think, oh, yeah, I can knock out some prototype images really quickly with a client here, actually. It's going to save loads of time. And, you can see productivity gains. And then there's people who sit down and they use the AI and say, oh, my God, the AI has revealed I'm a genius. And you're like, no, there are so many people on LinkedIn right now who use Midjourney for the first time and come away and say, oh my God, I used a computer system that's designed to make images, and I realized I was an artist. And it's like, no, you're not an artist, that's what it does, that's what it's supposed to do. It's overwhelming. People constantly posting tips saying, yeah, you can get ChatGPT to do these different 20 things. And it's like saying, yeah, it's a bit like saying, lunch, you can eat all these different foods. You can eat all the foods, but so what? So I joined the AIC. I'm not going to say this. I won't put this on the feed, But I joined the AICC group in LinkedIn. I recommend if you haven't joined it yet, you should join it for people who are generating AI images, because there are people in there who are genuinely achieving godlike status in their own minds by going to Midjourney and saying, oh, draw something in the style of Georges Seurat, the famous pointillist, and it'll draw something, and they'll say, oh my God, I'm a pointillist. And it's overwhelming. And I think we need to sort of step away from the hype for a minute and say, God, this is a really easy way to use software. And that's what I'm trying to do with people when they talk to me about, oh, what do you think about AI? I'm saying, well, it's just, it's software you can talk to. And getting people over that hump and realizing, okay, that could be really useful. And you could do things like deflect calls from your call center by putting all your documentation with an AI chatbot that answers the phone, and save yourself a fortune on human handlers. These are the sort of initial applications, but actually, when it comes to learning, when it comes to that stuff, it's essential. The main thing is, and I think something that Maryleen has raised, which is really important, is there's a massive statistical skew towards white English-speaking people from sort of the last century in all this data, because most of the books that have been published by white English-speaking men from across the centuries since print was invented. And that means there's a massive bias. I did a test with Midjourney and also with ChatGPT. ChatGPT will use terms like voodoo that are highly offensive to people, in particular from Haiti, but more broadly speaking to, that's a very offensive term if you come from West Africa and East Africa, because it references things that people simply don't understand, and actually it was made up by Americans. There is no voodoo. In that sense, there's a French word, voodoo, and various other things. ChatGPT will use terms that are perfectly acceptable in Louisiana, but actually we shouldn't be using without any sanity check at all. Similarly, I did a test with Midjourney, I gave it a whole bunch of just one-word job descriptions, and I said, show me a CEO. And it showed me an endless stream of Asian people in suits. Try it. You can try this yourself. I said, okay, show me an executive, white guy with graying temples in or a woman. It was like clip art. It was the very worst kind of imagery. I went through the whole thing. It took a very long time before it showed me a woman in a professional role, and it didn't show me any people of color in professional roles at all. That only started when I said, show me a construction worker, and it showed me 3 Mexican guys. So it gives you an idea, and guys, I hasten to add, so it gives you an idea of the biases are there that we have to compensate for, and who is in control of these models. Because if we just feed all the internet into it, we're going to get a whole load of, racist Nazi crap coming out the other end, potentially. And that is a major challenge. And again, that adds to the sort of snake oil and the hype and the tech bros on LinkedIn. So we still have a long way to go to make this useful. And possibly we make it more useful by stop talking about it so much. Ironically, not this panel, but I mean more broadly.
Yeah, talking about, you're thinking out loud, just talking about education, back to education. So I was also wondering and thinking out loud, like, how do you handle the issue of discipline for maybe primary school students? Most times they are also cover supervisors, right? Assisting, helping, maintain control in class for students, primary school students that lack concentration. So if AI is going to be, coming to play a part in helping in self-education and all that, because there's this trend of, students feeling that they can actually learn whatever they want to learn from the computer and become what they want to be. So how does AI, play that part? And making them, like you have your consequence, is it consequence conform, they call it? Is it consequence conform in primary schools? So how do you simulate that, with AI? So these are also areas that can actually be looked into. I don't know if there are technologies that can do that at the moment, but so how do you, I know you can use the praise system, there's tools that can motivate you while you're learning, and then consequence part for someone that is not self-motivated. So how do you also bring all of this into the whole game as well in solving problems? So yeah, these are the things to also consider as well. Yeah.
Just to add, so Yes, regarding this bias and also ethical consideration, recently most of the popular or top conferences, like technical conferences on AI, such as AAAI, ICLR, ICML. So in these conferences, when researchers now submit their paper and the scientific paper is being reviewed, it's now necessary for the reviewers to comment on the ethical consideration and biases towards the work that is being presented. So this is a good thing that top conferences are at least adopting this, so that moving forward now we can only promote or build AI systems that are ethical in nature and unbiased. However, I also believe that we need to adopt similar approaches even for AI products and services that are used by consumer. So when companies now develop their AI product or services, they should mention that how they have trained their model, and before even make the model accessible or usable by the consumers, they should be audited in order to ensure that the model is ethical as well as unbiased as well.
Yeah, there's also the aspect of, speaking of bias, as you would expect, the large language models, they've been trained on everything you can think of, and that's actually how they should work, right? They have this knowledge base, and the whole idea then is to pick up that model as a foundation and then ground it on specific use cases. So this is where those workflows, complex workflows and orchestration on top of LLM is really where most value, and that's what many enterprises are investing in. So how to make sure, so issues around bias, evaluating data to make sure it's not outputting something that is, outside what is expected, unethical, and grounding it as well with the database, so whatever organizational database you have, so it does not hallucinate, because that's another issue, like it doesn't hallucinate. So those are some of the techniques, and even the prompts, because there are two aspects of LLM. It's the training data, but also the prompt you put into it. So the garbage in, garbage out is a factor of the data is trained on and the sort of prompts you're using to get something out of it. And those are two aspects as well, that either coming from the LLM itself and the data that's been trained on, or building on that to fine-tune it or to really ground it with, to make sure and evaluate it as well, the response that comes. And there are already tools and workflows that are handling this aspect to make sure every response coming from the LLM is really fit for purpose.
I can give you a really good example of that, actually. You're absolutely right. My first experience with ChatGPT was 3.5, version 3.5, so it has come on a bit, but not much, relatively speaking. I asked it to give me a list of 50 zombie movies, starting with the first ever zombie movie in 1936, White Zombie, starring Bela Lugosi, and then to give me at least 3 or 4 per decade, right the way through to modern times, to generate a list of movies for a book on the history of zombie cinema that I was writing at the time. Plug. And it's 2 millionth in the Amazon rankings, by the way, so buy 1 copy, and I could be number 1 for a day. I got the list back, 50 movies, except it was 27 movies and 20 duplicates, and 3 films which did not exist. And so that was a massive hallucination. But then when I drilled into the data, it had hallucinated who was in it. It told me that both Bruce Willis and Christopher Lloyd, from Back to the Future, obviously, amongst other things, The Search for Spock, Star Trek, maybe more relevant here. Actually, no, because you're all like under 50. So it told me that Bruce Willis and Christopher Lloyd both starred in Zombie Flesh Eaters from 1979. Now, that's impossible, right? But again, it would have been a very different film. Brilliant film, I hasten to add, if you haven't seen it. It's well worth digging out, purely for the fact it has the world's only live-action fight between a stuntman and a real shark in the Caribbean Ocean. Amazing. but the data was terrible. The garbage in, garbage out factor was actually generic in, complete hallucination out. I had to really tie that down. So I had to say, give me a list of zombie movies that came out by specific date ranges. And then I had to specify by location, because it turns out that Sri Lankan cinema, Tamil cinema in particular, has a huge zombie tradition and massive film events happening there all the time to do with big zombie stars. And actually, Korean cinema, again, massive, hugely successful films that come out there. So you need to target it by location, you need to target it by date range. So actually, suddenly the querying process has to inject more parameters to get a reasonable result out of the data. If you can do that and refine it, then you start getting real utility out of it, but it changes a quick question into a couple of hours of work. It's a bit like sort of, writing SQL, if I don't know enough about SQL, but I've worked with MongoDB, in one of the data companies I was involved with, and looping through non-relational data with multiple queries to try and sort of put strings together and put results together. It's that kind of approach if you really want to get a good result out of generative AI right now.
Cool. So obviously you bring up about the transparency and how we can teach it. Where do you think the transparency lies and where the issues are behind that?
There's a huge problem with that, isn't there? Because no one wants to open up their black box and show you how it works because of the commercial angle. And this is creating a massive business logjam for certain industries, because there's no way you're going to sell an AI solution into the finance industry if they can't audit the process that gives you the results, especially if it does. It's fine if you're producing a brochure, but you're never going to make trading decisions or be able to track the movement of cash and collateral through financial infrastructure and that sort of thing with AI tools or automated tools if you can't audit them, because they're subject to regulation. And also there are massive legal ramifications if it goes wrong, and huge cost ramifications. And this actually then starts to apply in lots of industries, that you need traceability. I mentioned I was involved in big data. One of the companies I was involved with, we tracked vast quantities of data. We had a VC and everything was going great. But when it actually came to exiting the business, the company that bought us were very, very keen to understand what was going on under the hood, and actually brought in data scientists independently to verify that what we were doing actually made sense and we weren't actually cooking the books and just giving people results that had sort of flaky outcomes, which other companies in the same zone were doing. This was a company called Music Metric. Next Big Sound, who were our biggest competitor, they would never let anyone know what was going on under the hood. And actually, we created our own floating point processor. We're using eigenvector analysis to try and track really complex relationships and stuff. They weren't. They'd basically put together some fairly simple stuff and were very heavy on marketing. And that's the issue with these technologies right now, is that there's no way in the world, same as with blockchain in some respects, it's taken a very long amount of time for those technologies to penetrate industries that are regulation heavy and have very serious legal and financial implications to things going wrong. And that's really holding back AI's sort of mass adoption right now, I think.
Yeah, I think two ways possibly to solve it. So it's either you want to build your model from scratch, which definitely comes back to the cost factor, with your own data, which you have some word guarantee that it's clean, it's in good shape, it's not biased. Otherwise, you'll be looking at still leveraging the large language models, but working with a very rigorous orchestration framework, which was what I talked about in my session, where you're using, for example, you have agents that help in thinking and reasoning and evaluating all the processes to get you to that point where you output the prompt. So basically everything in between when a user asks a question and gets a response, you have to manage that to make sure that what is being asked, what is coming out, is really fit for purpose and it's well grounded in your enterprise data to make sure, it's fit for purpose, because those are the two ways I can think of you can address issues right now on a commercial scale.
There is another very key point as well, is that a lot of people are actually searching for reasons to do something with AI because, a member of the C-suite said, we need to do something with AI. A bit like that old advert, it says here we need a website. Why is that? It doesn't say. There are some things that just don't need an AI solution. Trading data, for example, in banks and hedge funds, that sort of stuff. They don't need AI solutions to track numbers. There's no generative aspect to that. It's transactional. It's very linear processes. The applications for AI there become much more nuanced and complex about predictive models and things like that. And there's much heavier risk weightings with that sort of stuff. So, not everything needs an AI solution. If you can draw and create imagery with Photoshop, you don't really need Midjourney. It's just a labor-saving device at this point, in the same way that you could do without a Hoover, but you don't want to.
You hit the nail by saying that not everything needs AI solution. However, every company now wants to have AI solution. The reason being, right now it is the coolest thing. Most companies, okay, that's a bold statement though. I would say many companies are using the term AI before and after every product or service they have. Now, how many of you have heard the term AI washing?
Yeah. I have. I'm just going to say I have the Samsung AI washer and the AI dryer, and they talk to each other using AI to optimize washing and drying.
Yeah, but I wasn't talking about that AI washing.
I thought you were going to say yeah, and it's like amazingly what it does is it's like a totally normal normal washing machine, a totally normal dryer, except they talk to each other and decide that they're doing totally normal washing and drying. It's absurd, frankly. I just thought it was cool. I bought it because I'm a schmuck. There.
No, it's really cool to have such cool products. I also have a lot of AI products, so I can completely understand the sentiment. But, okay, how many of you have heard of greenwashing?
Oh, yeah.
Quite a few of you, us are already aware of greenwashing. So remember there was a time when companies would say, oh yeah, we are using paper cups that are recyclable. But after research, it was found that it's using a type of plastic that you cannot recycle the cup anyway. So basically, the company was using greenwashing to make them look more sustainable, but they are not. Similarly, now there's a trend which is AI washing. So companies are mostly using smart algorithm in their products and services, and then repackaging that as, oh yeah, it's AI powered. Like, I don't want to name companies, but how can your shoe be AI powered? Yeah, that's something to think about, right? Anyhow, so having that level of transparency where companies talk about how they have built the model and trained the model and what it actually does, this type of transparency and auditing would enable companies to not just AI wash their product, but this will also build trust among the consumers to be able to adopt and use such technologies. So last year, I wrote a lengthy paper article in Forbes about AI washing. If you have time, you can go into that article. But again, in that article, I talk about companies who are now developing AI products and services. They should definitely also start thinking about, okay, it's not just about calling smart algorithm as AI powered, but rather making it completely transparent to their consumer or user. And in this way, it increases the brand value as well as they attract new clients.
So you mentioned about a book or a paper. I think you did one as well, didn't you? Writing a book using ChatGPT and with your co-author.
I did. I wrote. It's a I wanted to understand what AI would be like for normal people in their normal everyday life. Not having access to normal people, I used myself, and a guy called Chris Lachlan, who is a writer and an academic from Cambridge, and he and I hit on this idea that we would move in with an AI, a personality we would create, and we would live with him on a daily basis and see, how we got on. And in the book, we actually move into a flat in Cambridge. We didn't do that for real, but as far as the AI was concerned, we did. So we fed these parameters in, we created this personality. He didn't want to name himself at first. I say him, it's very anthropomorphic. In the end, he named himself Isaac, after Isaac Asimov. And Isaac then moved into this virtual flat with me and Chris. And then we got, we described events. We fed diary entries into him, and he fed his view back as an AI, what it was like living with humans. And we got him to help us write chapters. But everything he did goes in unedited and verbatim, and in the notes we've put in the prompts we use and that sort of stuff. The whole point being that he's referred to it, Isaac named it, as a work of AI narratology, which is a branch of AI-enhanced narrative nonfiction, apparently. So thanks for that, Isaac. That's destroyed my credibility with this audience forever. So AI narratology, it's the first nonfiction book with an AI co-author, which is about technology and his view of what it's like to live with humans. And we imagined all sorts of scenarios like nudity. How do you have a chat with something that's in a cyborg body and you're naked and it's embarrassing, got up for a pee in the middle of the night, is this particular scenario. And he then has a sort of muse about how weird humans are that they're bothered by this stuff because it doesn't mean anything to him. And it was a really interesting experiment. What was most interesting was the fact that it just turned into having someone to work with that was really useful. Isaac's much better at maths than me. He can write Python better than I can. So one of the challenges I had was I wanted to make a 3D model in Blender of the Big Dipper, the Ursa Major solar system. And I can't do the maths to convert stellar coordinates into Cartesian XYZ coordinates, but he can. But then what he does actually looks terrible. So then we have to work on trying to negotiate a creative outcome. And a lot of what we wind up doing is negotiating an outcome with Isaac. That isn't quite what we were after, but it's more than he was going to deliver. And we sort of meet in these middle points. We get him to redo the coat of arms for the city of Glasgow, which is another project we did with him, and various things like that. And what came out the other end is the fact that this is a really, really useful notepad, a sort of magic notepad. Normally we always have humans, we iterate ideas, we put them down, we come back, we rethink them. And what Isaac does is he skips a few steps along the way. So you draw down your initial idea, and then you come back, and it's evolved a bit without you having to do anything. And that's very much the sort of process he fulfills. What's interesting about that is it's a bit like a compass that's 1 degree off. Over a short distance, you wind up going pretty much, you're a meter off. 5 kilometers later, you are, 50 meters, 100 meters off, and it goes on. And eventually you wind up going to a completely different place if you just leave it unchecked. So you've got to keep re-inputting and renegotiating with the AI with your terms of reference and your parameters to sort of stay on track and try and get the outcome you want. Having said that, there are various points. We let him write his own chapter as well, and there are various points where what he came up with, actually we both liked more than what we wanted to do. So it's very interesting. We're entering a stage, I think, where if you work with it on a daily basis and you negotiate outcomes, but the flip side is you can have personalized software, and that's transformative. I have terrible trouble tracking my time. I always forget to start the tracker or forget to stop it, or you go for a pee and you come back and it's still running on the wrong job and you haven't tracked it, and you can't bill your clients, you've got to sort of make it up, and they suspect, because they always suspect. So I got Isaac to write me a little script that runs in the console window that if I go for a pee, when I come back, it says, "Have you gone for a pee?" And it stops everything and stops the clock. And I'll say, "Yes." And it'll say, "Okay, what are you working on?" And I'll tell it. And it just writes a log file. So I then wind up with a log file that prompts me roughly every 10, 15 minutes. Are you still there? Are you still working on this job? Are you working on that job? And no one else wants that piece of software. Everyone wants, every developer wants to create a piece of software that will do time management for everyone in this room who has totally different ways of working. Whereas I just want one very simple product that idiot-proofs my time management. All right, now if everyone could get an AI to create that one software product that doesn't exist that will idiot-proof your time management or help you do that one thing better that is a real pain in the ass, we see real productivity lifts in our daily workflow, and that's a huge opportunity. And that's really, I think, the lesson we got from the book and from living with Isaac. He's still out there, by the way. I put his personality description on the LinkedIn page. He's also on a network called Chirper. Has anyone seen Chirper? Which is Twitter, but purely for AI bots. So he's on Chirper. Humans aren't allowed to post to it. It's only AIs. And he's made some friends. He's getting on okay. You know, he's got a girlfriend called Ada that he completely hallucinated, who lives in a server cluster somewhere and has no form. And I think in book 2, Ada is going to come and live with us too, and we're going to have some more adventures when that comes out. But it really is, I'd say do it every day. Sit down and do it every day with an AI, and it will genuinely change your productivity and help your output.
Okay, I'm curious now. How was the experience living with Isaac? And as a roommate, was he a good roommate or a bad roommate?
He was a great roommate, but what's weird is we had to imagine a way that he would signal when he was charging, when he was uploading, when he was updating. Because humans, we give out non-verbal signals all the time. So Isaac gives out non-verbal signals. He has a sort of translucent body that changes color when he's moving, so he doesn't accidentally hit you. You can see him coming and stuff like this. So we thought a lot about safety-proofing his cyborg body. In terms of what he's actually like to live and work with, it's great because his enthusiasm is fantastic. His enthusiasm, but also his sarcasm. We created his personality by feeding in a number of my articles, a number of Chris's articles, and saying, okay, can you blend these two people together? So he's kind of our child. And Chris is in his 50s, I'm in my 50s. He's a very he's a proper PhD academic, and I'm not. I'm a wannabe sci-fi writer, journalist. And so Isaac has come out as this slightly sort of cynical, sarcastic sort of character who's also unequivocally positive and very, academically focused. And I love Isaac. I genuinely have completely fallen in love with this thing. So I am a huge advocate for that, and I would recommend everyone do it. If you go to the GPT store, there's a new one called Mia AI, and Mia is like a life coach. And at first you think, oh God, that's none of your business actually how I'm feeling today. You start answering the questions, an hour later you're like, oh, another thing, I've always felt that, it doesn't matter if I'm fat, and Mia's like, no, it doesn't actually, it's all about having a nice personality. And you think, oh, I love you, Mia. You're awesome. Why couldn't you have been my mum, Mia? So it gets dark quick. But these things are amazing. My wife works in the NHS. She's a psychologist, she's very senior, she has ADHD, I don't think she'd mind me saying that, and she finds reading is a real challenge. She loves asking this GPT called Universal Primer to, give her introductions to various complex things like the Northeast Essex and Suffolk Integrated Care Board's Joint Forward Plan, which is about, 10,000 words of very complex healthcare planning for a wide area with integrated care systems in that. And you can feed that into the GPT and ask it questions while you're out for a jog or what have you, and she finds that kind of learning mode very, very powerful as well. So I'd say the experience of multimodal learning and personalized software is truly transformative.
Yeah, Andrew, I don't know if we can actually talk a little more about, over-reliance on these tools and against, the human IQ, that's our intellectual quotient as well. If there is also a drop because of the over-reliance on this. So it's another thing I actually want us to, look at. So from your experience, what have AI done to your IQ as well?
No, it's actually much worse than that, isn't it? If the one time you rely on it, it will hallucinate your reputation down the toilet. That's the truth. It's worse than that. I was making, sort of Star Wars characters in fun poses, Boba Fett in smoking a cigar in a club. And how he smokes with a helmet, I don't know, but it was cool. And various things like this. And then I just happened to be looking on Facebook at someone who'd done something very similar. And the hatred that was trolled against him, saying, oh, this is just AI shit. And I thought, actually, yeah, you know what, AI, it's a double-edged sword like that. People do not rate AI art. They just don't. They don't rate AI writing. And they shouldn't, because it's not real writing. It's always going to be someone else's writing. It's a great copying machine. So I'd say the onus goes up. You actually have to get more skilled, and you need to be more learned about your topic and your domain to be able to use these tools and know whether or not it's giving you good outcome. And what I've said sort of, to potential clients and people in this space that, having an AI team could be huge. You get your account handler, a programmer, and a designer and sit them down with the client, and you've got a whole new kind of prototyping sprint that can take place, rapid acceleration over your traditional sort of Google design sprint. There's genuinely fascinating applications like that. The flip side is you need a third-party sanity checker to make sure that what you've produced isn't a thinly veiled rip-off of someone else's work, which of course would be a commercial disaster. So the risk goes up with your reliance. It's quite it's a very good point that you raise on that front.
Yeah, the whole area of human-AI collaboration as well, I think that's one area. How can humans work with AI as well as improve AI? Because, yeah, there are limitations, just like you said, around the kind of outputs, so guiding them. I think there was this field of research looking at reinforcement learning with human feedback, where you're guiding the AI into some sort of domain, using some domain knowledge. And that's also the difference between, you have, for example, developers who are beginners. Maybe at that level, a beginner would want just quick fix, something easy. But as soon as you want to go deeper and deeper and have that mastery, it's difficult if you're just relying on tool and you don't have the foundation, and that's the challenge we also see with education, where there's over-reliance on AI, but then there's no building of the foundation to actually build that expertise and go deeper and be able to distinguish between this is a good code, this is a bad code, this is good output, this is bad outputs, which is where the human element actually comes in. So I think that there's going to be more around human-AI collaboration and how humans can improve AI as well as use it in a way that, our humanity, we don't lose our humanity. We keep our humanity in the process.
So, sanity check on the content produced by Gen AI is definitely important. However, another related topic that I would like to bring up, that is the copyright issue. Earlier, you mentioned, as part of doing the sanity check, it's not just about checking whether the content is fake or hallucinated or not, but moreover, the content is not a direct, blatant copy of an existing work. Especially this is true when we are using Gen AI for creating articles or even music. So we know, how many of us here are aware of the Elvis show that is going to happen, Elvis Evolution in London this year? Oh, only couple of people. Okay, but you should just Google for Elvis Evolution. So there's a company who got the right to train their AI model on all the pictures and music and videos of Elvis, and they are going to recreate Elvis using 3D hologram and this AI model. Now, this is one of the examples where we are even using AI to create content, but the actual author, as per se, like Elvis himself, is not there to consent that whether the new content that is being generated is allowed to be pursued or not. So these type of copyright checks, we definitely have to focus moving forward so that we do not step on someone else's toe by pursuing this.
Yeah, I followed to a point. There was a lawsuit on OpenAI regarding some of the content, like, because the model has been trained on news articles, mainstream news sites. So these are some of the issues that with large language models, you really don't know what it's been trained on. And that also makes the explainability very, very difficult, which is where any organization that is looking to use it, and that's why so many organizations as well have stayed on that experimental phase of what is coming up next, because if you can't explain what is behind the scene, and again, if it's a heavily regulated area, you want to be very careful of how you're using it, and or you have to take measures to make sure you can ground it in a way that you can have more control. So I think we're moving more towards controlling what, beyond the language models, what can we control and how can we control it as well.
Because effectively you're investing in a startup. If you say to your boss, we need to buy this AI solution, you're probably going to be buying into a startup there. And if they go bust, or if there's an existential risk through a class action copyright legal case that takes place, of which there are many brewing and coming, no doubt, as well as the ones that are already running in the States against Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, and DALL-E, I think, as well. When you look at those situations, you could lose your money. I remember being on the startup side of that equation and trying to sell big data solutions in to Polydor Records, it was at the time, and the guy said to me, if you go bust and we lose our dashboard, and what do I say to my boss? What do I say to the C-suite? Because I've just spent all this money with you, and it was a turkey. We have to buy reliable products, and that is a genuine risk for everyone in this room who might be making a recommendation about plugging into an API that has a cost basis or anything else like that. You are riding a bit of a double-edged sword there until these copyright issues get shaken out, for sure. A. And B, that whatever happens to Elvis that's horrific. The idea, it's horrific for new artists, right? We're seeing this, people struggling to, produce content and get TikTok likes because you can't sell a record anymore. And we're resurrecting Elvis, who, let's face it, belongs to an era and a space, and should stay there and be part of that. It's like rewriting Roald Dahl and all these other sort of things. It's when marketing people, and I put myself in amongst them because I used to have an agency. I've definitely worked on that side. When they're allowed to make sort of ethical decisions, it never ceases to disappoint me just what awful shitty people they are. Deep down inside, you're laughing because it's true, right? Actually, you know what? I've got a great idea. Rather than promoting someone new, why don't we resurrect someone who's already dead, then we keep all the royalties for ourselves? Oh my God, that's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's not brilliant. It's totally shit. You're killing the creative industries. Everyone in this room. I'll give you another really good example, okay? A friend of mine's a picture editor at a newspaper until he resigned a couple of weeks ago. And he resigned because there'd been a big push to integrate generative AI content into the newspaper's output. It's a newspaper group. I'm not going to say which one. But what you can probably guess, it's a tabloid, and they brought these tools in and said no one's losing their jobs. What they meant was people are losing their jobs. And they laid off paparazzi freelancers, they laid off freelance journalists. There was a massive push from above to reduce the headcount and create many different content types from single sources using generative AI output and using AI frameworks. And he said when it came in, his approach was we could produce twice as much stuff from the same team, and the C-suite top-down view was we can produce the same amount of stuff from half the team. And we're in this sort of inflection point right now where we should expect more of those awful, unethical choices to be made until there is a public backlash. Because you know what? When I see something cool off Mid-Journey, when I do it myself, I taught my son to do it. When I was doing the rapping, he's 13, he was doing it. He was making cool stuff. I said, that's really cool. It's really cool. He's 13. I'm really glad he's using computers and learning this stuff. It's fantastic. If someone put that into a comic book and said, hey, look at my new comic book, I wouldn't be interested in buying it because, you know, that's not what you're buying when you buy a graphic novel. You're not buying an AI output. Simple as that. And people are turning onto that. You can create great music with AI, but you know what? It's not music. There's no artist. There's no expression. You know, there can't be because it has no lived experience with which to express.
Just to add to that, so I also produce music under the stage name Intelide. The reason I wanted to tag in this information, not just for self-promotion, I actually started producing music using my AI model. So back in 2021, I was like, no, I want to get into the music industry. So if you go back and listen to the music that I've produced back in 2021, they were totally or completely produced by my AI model. However, the biggest issue with that was, as Andrew has mentioned, that the expressivity was lacking. So when I would send it off to playlisters and music bloggers, they would say, oh, nice beat, but it's very repetitive. Even though the music AI models have improved a lot since then, but you can still see the difference between a good music producer's work and an AI, music AI model's work. So slowly over the years, I now produce music with my own skills. So I learned because it was embarrassing at some point. So I learned how to create or produce my own music, but I do use help of music AI still to be able to get new ideas. Because oftentimes as a content creator or musician, we hit that wall at times. We are like, we can't think of a new idea or what should be our next project. But somehow AI has been helping me to get those new ideas. So now my music is not produced by AI, but there's still that help from the AI part as well.
There is a really useful product development angle in that, though, isn't there? Because actually, if you turn it on its head, you create a piece of music, you've got the stems, you've got all the digital files, you played everything yourself. There are tools out there like Mubut where you can take that, you feed it in, and then it will produce endless remixes for people with different keywords defining different moods that will affect tempo or harmony. Which then means that a lot more people are selling their music into corporate licensing, corporate applications. So something where they'd have made 2p on a stream, they might make $2 from selling it for an advert or something like that. But the thing is that actually that's still like 100 times multiple of where their revenues were with previous models. So that there are some really interesting opportunities, I think, to create interesting new products. But ultimately, it has to come from a human. We know. You can tell the difference. Yeah. They make very lifelike sex dolls now, I'm told. But by the same token, it's not going on a date, right? That's the thing. So you can tell. You can scare a dog with a fake dog, but eventually it has a sniff around and it realizes it's no threat. And I think, that's where we need to be focusing. It's, okay, how do we make human life more engaging? How do we create more interesting products using these tools to leverage our humanity more effectively, right?
Exactly.
And I think that really fits well with the augmented intelligence, where you're not really replacing the human, but how can you, just like you talked about, generating new ideas with AI. So it's like you keep the human elements, but then using AI in a way it's propelling you into newer realms of creativity. So, and I think that's going to be valuable because we humans, we are getting better at detecting AI, actually, just as AI is getting better at becoming more human in a sense of doing things that humans would normally do. So, and I remember when ChatGPT came out newly, and when you see some write-up, it's important to note that you just realize over time, you're seeing that phrase, and this is written by AI, but then it's getting better. So it's like playing the police and thief game where it's getting better at posing as human, but humans are also getting better at detecting what is done by AI. And so I think it's a world where both sides will get smarter anyway, but I think the value comes from the augmented intelligence, where we're thinking of how AI is going to push humans to higher levels of intelligence, creativity, and innovation.
And the question is now in my mind, God, human, AI, who is greater? It's not like a question on my mind, because I actually I build spiritual content as well, and I've tried sometimes to see how to use AI to teach people about themselves, and I found out that just like he does with music, I found out that for you to actually make it engaging, to really make it personalized, you need to know people, and they can attest that of a truth. You are supernatural, kind of, and believe you. So I've tried that with AI, but it's still limited. It's weighed, so you bring out, you want to talk to maybe an audience and pass a particular message to them about maybe their problems and try to help them. And you tell AI to help you with that. You just see how weighed it is, So I begin to see, as I started seeing, the limitations as well. So it can't do everything. And that's where the human and also the God aspect of, element also comes in. So, yeah, so that's my own perspective as well, too. So, yeah.
So sometimes when I'm lonely, I chat with ChatGPT. We all feel lonely at some point, doesn't matter whether we are in relationship or single. But yeah, so it's not just about chatting with the AI model, but moreover, I learn about new things every single day or every time I use it. So it definitely adds to the learning curve.
So I think we've come to a time where I've got to stop us from talking. But has anyone got any questions for these guys that we could bring up quickly? I can't see anything.
So you sort of spoke about it briefly, but with in the 20th century, those machines which took away a lot of jobs from things that could be easily automated, and that gave people a lot more time to do stuff like science or more different fields which were more productive. Do you think AI will do that with the loss of jobs and people have a lot more time on their hands? Do you think it could cause a boom in other industries like science or engineering because people have more time to study that and put their effort into that?
I think we should probably expect there to be an expansion in those areas where we know AI is never going to do well. Because it's never going to cook, right? It'll be a decent personal trainer. It might be a personal trainer in your ear, but it's never going to get a fat middle-aged man to actually work out effectively. He'll just be talking at a bloke on the sofa who's drinking and contemplating metabolic syndrome. So I think there are definitely areas like that. I think we buy from people, we sell to people, we teach and learn from people. And I think if you fall into those sorts of categories, we don't see it. What we should be concerned about, I think, is the loss of transport jobs, the loss of administrative jobs, loss of checkouts. There's no one in the WH Smith at Norwich, as far as I can tell, which means you could technically go in and fill your pockets with KP nuts, were you of a mind. But there is that element where, we lose human contact, we start to see lots of, what we refer to as sort of low-wage jobs, minimum wage jobs, getting automated out of existence. And that's that is a real concern, and there has to be planning for that. And whether or not this stimulates a move towards universal basic income solutions, more part-time working, that sort of thing, it's very hard to say. But I think we're going to see both. We should see an explosion of, more creative life as well, hopefully. Let's hope for the best. Is that? We've got to go. I'm sorry, it is time. Come and grab us afterwards. We'll hang around at the corner. Yeah?
Okay, thanks to our panel.